All right, hello again. What I'm going to be doing in this video is giving a quick tutorial on how to run a correlation on Vassarstats. So, for your lab report, the variables you will be correlating will be the cost of the textbook, which is this column over here, approximately how much did the textbook cost, with usefulness. So you'll be correlating these two columns here. Because I want you guys to do it. I'm not going to run the exact correlation. I'm going to run a correlation between two other variables just so you can see how to do it, how to look at the output, and how to interpret it. Okay, so I'm going to be doing a correlation between these two variables, textbook usefulness and a student's GPA, right? So is it possible that students with higher GPA view textbooks as more useful? We're going to find out. All right, so here's how we do it. First thing we're going to do is we go back to Vassarstats. Okay, so vassarstats.net. To run a correlation, you look along the left-hand side. It says correlation and regression. So we're going to click on that. And the next link we're going to hit is the very first option here. It says data import version. So we click on data import version. So under data entry, what it wants us to do is it's going to ask us to copy the data from the database, and we're going to paste it in this section here. So it's really important that your data are right next to each other. So in our case, for this example, these two are next to each other, which is perfect. For you guys, they're also next to each other, which is also perfect. Okay, so let's copy the data. So we want to make sure we're scrolled all the way up. We're going to highlight both columns together. Notice I'm not highlighting the label of the column, just the data. And I forgot to mention that in the other video, but we never highlight the titles. So we're going to go down up to where we've got data from both groups. Even though there's some data down here, it's not going to run it if we've got some blank data. Okay, so you go all the way down to where you've got data from both of the variables. If you scroll up, you can check to make sure that only the data are highlighted. Next, we're going to copy it. I like to do Control-C, but you could also right-click and hit Copy. We go back to Vassarstats, and then we paste the data. All right, we're just pasting it there. All right, so this is our first column, right? That's the usefulness score. This is the second column, and that is students' GPA. Now we're going to see if they're related to each other. So let me click on Calculate. Notice there's a whole bunch of numbers here, most of which you don't need to pay attention to. Here are the things that you do need to pay attention to. When you're reporting your descriptive stats, you're always going to give your mean and standard deviation, so you can pull that information from here. And X is going to be your first column, so X. These are the information for course interest, okay? And then Y is the GPA, okay? So we've got 3.52 is the average, and then standard deviation. Down here is the results of the correlation. So our correlation coefficient is 0.03. And if you guys remember anything from stats, correlation that's close to 0, right, is really not very strong. We would consider that incredibly weak. So this is a weak association. And is it significant? We're going to look at the p-value over here under two-tailed, and we've got a p-value of 0.64. And again, if you remember some important stuff from your stats class, this is not significant because it isn't less than 0.05. Okay, because this number, our p-value, is greater than 0.05, we would say there's no significant relationship, or just essentially no relationship between these two variables. Okay, going back to the correlation coefficient, just as a refresher, if it's close to 0, there's really no association. If it's around a 0.2, that's considered weak. If it's around a 0.5, it's considered moderate, right? Anything, kind of 0.7, 0.8 is considered strong. Okay, so when you run your correlation with the actual variables, you might you'll need that information to interpret it. And that's it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this output and paste it into the unit notes, and then you can see how I wrote up the results section, pulling the data from this section. All right, that is all. It's not letting me stop the video.